It's that time of year again when Lord Gaben compels you to give him some of that sweet money. There are a ton of strategy games for you to pick, some as cheap as a couple of dollars, many classics. But let me tell you what's worth your money that's not the usual suspects, the most recent strategy games within the past year that I have really enjoyed. Hello there strategy gamers and welcome to my humble channel where I talk all things strategy games. Let me start off with Sins of a Solar Empire 2. It didn't have it easy, you know. There was a way bigger space RTS game from a much bigger franchise that came out this year. But I think it's fair to say, where that game failed to capture the interest of its rabid fan base of the classic, Sins of a Solar Empire 2 swooped in to be, in my opinion, the best space RTS game in 2024. Ironically, did you know some of the developers of Sins of a Solar Empire actually worked on the expansion to the original homeworld? See, there's a connection there. But anyway, Sins of a Solar Empire 2 seems like a pretty straightforward sequel, right? It doesn't completely rethink the formula. It's not a sequel that's ashamed of just being an improved iteration of the previous game. No. It's an improvement over the solid foundations that was Sins of a Solar Empire Rebellion. This is perhaps the best multiplayer space RTS that's out there. Because there is no single player campaign beyond skirmish against the AI, but the awesome news is that's coming. We will finally get a single player campaign as a DLC sometime in the future. We don't know when yet. And also they'll be adding a fourth faction. So I guess Sins of a Solar Empire 2 isn't such a small iteration after all. It's a game that will evolve to be much bigger given time. The Last Train Home is not a perfect strategy game. It isn't the most balanced. Its real-time tactics missions aren't the most tactical and can be a bit frustrating at times too. But this is a game that's really a sum of its parts. There's a train you manage your troops on, pick a path to travel, investigate points of interest on the map, fight real-time tactical battle. It's a bit of squad-based management game where you'll need to keep your soldiers at tip-top condition, mixed with light RTS or rather RTT, real-time tactics. Also, it's very much a survival game where you need to conserve your resources and collect or scavenge whatever you can find in the countryside. I do think though the story, which is set in World War I, is also rather good. It's a typical sort of war story with a somber tinge of sadness as you're a bunch of Czechoslovakian soldiers that's just trying to return home from a war-torn country. But you know, the Reds aren't making it easy for you. I must admit I played the real-time battles by save scumming like a lot, which means I saved the game at almost every minute and reloaded when things didn't go as expected. It might be that sort of game for you too, with lots of reloads, but you know, I really like the story and setting enough to play through these missions that way anyways. Now, if you've been following the videos I've put out, you would have known by now that I'm going to put this game in this list. I am, after all, one of the biggest fans and I guess promoters of Against the Storm, a city builder that honestly defies categorization because it has so many elements from different genres that at times, you know, even I question myself, is this really a city builder? A survival game? A crafting or production chain game? Yes, you probably guessed it. It is all of the above and maybe more. Against the Storm is such a unique game. I didn't even play it like a city builder honestly, instead I focused on getting the orders done. So there's this queen in the game who gives you orders and the longer you take to complete them, the angrier she gets. There's a limit to her anger because when this queen is pissed, it means you have lost. Normally I hate timed mechanics in game, but in Against the Storm, you know, it makes the city building part a bit more focused. And loss isn't actually game over, so I guess that sort of makes it okay, because Against the Storm also plays like a roguelike. You just restart as easily. There's this whole overworld thing with some neat lore about how they have lost the technology of the past. and this whole rain punk technology to be discovered. The world is a stormy place and the morale of your citizens fluctuate based on the weather. There is a mechanic called forest hostility. The more you clear the forest, you chop down the trees, the hostility increases, your citizens gets unhappier. And you'll need to clear out the forest to discover resource nodes on the map, these glades, which may hold dangerous events as well. So there's layers and layers of gameplay depth here, but Against the Storm never feels overwhelming. It sounds complex, but the more you play, the more you unravel your own strategies to play the game. Against the Storm is honestly an impressive achievement for the devs to have made such a deep game that I feel is still accessible. You should definitely check it out. Okay, so those are the games I have really enjoyed this year and played lots of. Now for the quick fire round. Other worthy mentions. All these are again relatively new games. Mechabellum is a really cool small indie game and auto battler with lots of mechs and counter units. Big armies clash against each other and things go boom like a lot. It's primarily a multiplayer game without like a proper single player campaign. There are some solo stuff, but if you like auto battlers, I think this is one of the best, if not the best, recent ones. Total War PHARAOH is a much better game from launch. I think Creative Assembly Sofia did an amazing job with this historical Total War game. I think they should be proud of what they've done. And now when you purchase this game, you get a whole new free standalone expansion, Total War Dynasties, which is kinda like Immortal Empires from Warhammer, but combining factions from Total War PHARAOH and Total War Troy for the ultimate Bronze Age Total War experience. If Age of Empires is inspired by history, Age of Mythology was inspired by the historical bits that were mythological in nature. It's pretty evident in the name of the game. It's the first Age of Empires game in 3D. People have been asking for an Age of Mythology remake for a long time, and World's Age and Forgotten Empires knocked it out of the ballpark again. Who doesn't love massive superpowers of epic proportions like meteor strikes and lightning strikes from Zeus, mythological beasts teaming up with your human armies to beat the crap out of the other human army? Another great remake for the series. In Diplomacy is not an option. Diplomacy is actually really not an option, as you can see here. This is a real-time strategy game. You could think it's sort of like Stronghold. Remember those castle defense games? Diplomacy is not an option is, I suppose, a more simplified version of that game. There are no citizen happiness mechanics in sight. It uses a cutesy, blocky art style with loads of humor, but don't let the cuteness fool you, you know. It can get pretty darn challenging. It's actually a fantasy setting with magic spells and undead hordes, but it also pokes fun at super serious fantasy. But at its core, it's a really easy to get into base building action, which is also one of the best this year. So there you have it. These are my recommendations for strategy games to get during the Steam sale. If I've missed any other worthy strategy games, do share in the comments. Tell me what strategy games you plan to get during the holidays. Now, if you want to know why I love Against the Storm so much, to the point of dreaming about strategies for the game, yeah, check out this video I did about the game. Thank you for watching and farewell, noble friends.